So as we learned from the film New York Stories, for those of you who have watched it, there is such a thing as a collective grandmother in the Jewish psyche. Let me tell you what happens in the film. A stage magician asks for a volunteer, which is the grandmother. The grandmother volunteers. She walks into a Chinese box that is then pierced with swords. And then, of course, the trick is that the box is open and the grandmother should walk out unharmed. But of course, in the film, the box is opened and there is nothing in it. And the magician, everybody else, is puzzled. Where is the grandmother? The grandmother is nowhere to be found, and she reemerges in the sky. In case you didn't know where she was. So that's where the grandmother is watching from. Hence the point is that nobody needs to be actually watching. As long as people think there is somebody watching, they will feel pressure to conform to the latke. To sum up, the latke always gets the vote, not because people like it, but because people want to be left alone. Okay, let me move to the second part of my argument. The second reason why this vote should give you cause for concern. The agenda. So let me briefly introduce a second political concept, that of the agenda. So by the agenda, political scientist means exactly what will be voted over and in what order. For example, what bills are to be considered in a congressional vote. Now, it has been shown that whoever has power over the agenda has also power to influence the outcome of the vote. How is this relevant here? Well, year after year, on this night we're asked to cast a vote. We rack our brains in an effort to see through the arguments of these distinguished debaters and to determine what's best, the latke or the hamantash. So we have labored under the illusion that we have a choice. But the question itself has distracted us from a bigger question. Why must we be stuck with choosing between two mediocre Jewish food items when there clearly exist superior alternatives? Consider, for example, another Jewish food item that has been conspicuously left out of this debate. That would be the jelly donut. Otherwise known as sufganiyot in Hebrew, or ponchkes in Yiddish, or in Spanish as bolas de Berlin, which actually translates into the balls of Berlin. And this made my dear grade school classmate Daniel Berlin quite uncomfortable during this time of the year, and such balls are widely consumed. But why do I claim that the jelly donut is superior? Well, let me show you how beautiful it is. There you go. It's a beautiful picture of the jelly donut. Not only is it beautiful, but it brings together the virtue of the latke, being fried and being served hot, with the virtue of the hamantash, which is the filling. There you go. But anyway, going back to the theory, whoever sets the agenda, whoever chooses what will be voted over, has power to influence the outcome. Hence, by excluding superior alternatives, the agenda setter in this debate has helped to ensure the continuing victory of the latke. As the preeminent political scientist Robert Dahl would emphasize, an election is not truly free unless you have free entry. When you kick the ponchke out, you clearly do not have free entry, and you do not have true democracy. Okay, now on to the third part of the argument. The setter, the agenda setter. Who is the agenda setter? Who is to blame for all this mischief, you might be asking by now? So let me complete my institutional analysis of this forum by revealing who is responsible for all this, who has been setting the agenda, and how she or he has managed to keep the latke on top and the other Jewish food items out. Now, I could tell you, I wish I could tell you that the answer is not the latke lobby. Alas, I may not be able to tell you that, but let me begin from the bottom. So, consider the following question. How did I, somebody who is relatively new at the university, I've been here for scarcely a year, with nothing to show on my CV by way of either professional experience with latkes or hamantaschen at all, end up here, standing up in front of you tonight on equal footing with such distinguished co-debaters, all tenured professors. And to top it all off, as if that were not enough, how did I manage to go last, to have the last word tonight? Well, I'm going to answer that question for you, again with some evidence. The first exhibit here is going to be, how many candidates do you think were interviewed for this position, that of the last debater, before settling on me? Let me show you some data. So one has to interpret the data. So what do we learn from this data? I'll tell you what I learned when I saw this graph. Knowing someone helps. I want to show you how this debater standing right here, right now, was recruited. I'm going to reproduce an original document for you. This is the email on the basis of which I was recruited. So let me read a line for you. How does this work? On the subject of getting perks, if you know the guy in charge, I'd like to invite you to be one of the debaters at this year's Latke-Hamantash Debate. I think it would be great fun to have you, and so on and so forth. I want to emphasize this on the subject of getting perks if you know the guy in charge. Who, you may ask, wrote this to me? I'm going to remove some of the blanking out to reveal his or her identity. Dan. Now, which Dan? This could be any Dan. We know, all of us know a lot of Dans. Well, let me reveal some more. Daniel J. Levinson, Executive Director of the Neuberger Hillel Center. I'll use the pointer to point him out to you. But let's keep moving up the food chain, literally the food chain. How many candidates do you think were interviewed for his position of Director of the Hillel? I'm going to show you some more data. But this is not all. Who recruited Dan Levinson in the first place? One would be inclined to think that it's the Hillel board, which usually is in charge of recruiting the Hillel directors. Now, it just so happens that in Chicago, of all places, Hillel and its decisions are not left to mere chance or to the board. Rather, they are determined higher up. As some of you may know, the Hillel, the Jewish organization on campus, is usually an independent entity. However, in Illinois and in Chicago, the Hillel is not independent. It's owned by the so-called Federation. So let me sum it up for you. The Federation takes money from the Latke lobby. In turn, the Federation forces Hillel to hire Dan, who basically puts me here. And no one says no to the Federation. How is this for a conspiracy theory? Now you know the truth. If I wanted you to take anything away from this argument, it's the following two things. First, number one is that more among you dislike the Latke and perhaps the Hamantash than you think, but you have not been allowed to express it. Number two, I am here because I know the boss. I started speaking out about choice. I want to end on the same note. When it comes time for you to choose tonight, vote your conscience. When time comes to eat tonight, eat your conscience. Thank you very much.